Welcome back to Everyone Has a Story, True Tales from Everyday Life. We are so glad you're here with us today. And once again, you see us both here together. And this is the video that we promised you last week, where we're going to learn even more about Jim Great Elk Waters than you've already glimpsed with his stories. So Jim, welcome. I'm glad that you have agreed to do this because I know there's a lot of people that are interested in more of your life story. And we've glimpsed quite a bit already from the tales that you've told. And Grandma was a kitchen healer and Grandpa grew roses. There's some fabulous stories and people are really loving them and enjoying them. So let's start from the beginning. Tell us a little bit about where you were born, when you were born, how you were born, because I know there's quite a tale that is involved there.
Okay, let's get into it. So thank you for the first question. Where was I born? Well, I was born on the kitchen table in an apartment house in Fairborn, Ohio during World War II. And the reason I was born on the kitchen table was because my mom didn't want to clean up the house when we had the birth. So the kitchen table was the easiest place to do it. So that was pretty much it.
And you were born in?
I was born in Fairborn, Ohio in 1943, coming upon March 20th, which means you all know how to do math? That's way too old. That's all I can say.
We're coming up on Jimmie's 80th birthday. There's going to be a big celebration in the household this year for sure. So Fairborn, Ohio, for people who may or may not be familiar with Ohio, is closest to what biggest city?
Fairborn, Ohio is basically a suburb of Dayton, Ohio. It is the home of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and it's got a long history there. Good place to grow up.
Now, you had a pretty catastrophic event happen to you early in your life. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how it's impacted you since?
Yeah, that was pretty traumatic. When I was a little guy, I got hit by a car. Really a bad accident. The car was doing in excess of 70 miles an hour, according to the sheriff. And it did some severe damage to me. Left me with partial hearing, Jacksonian epilepsy, which is something I grew out of, thank God. And it left me with some really impairment that I've had to deal with during those formative years. Subsequently, after that, I got to be pretty good. I did have, with the epilepsy, a series of embarrassing moments. In school, you don't want to be passing out in a grand mal seizure because some people just like to make fun of you doing that. And I understand it.
Well, that's a heck of a story. Holy cow. That's really amazing that you survived that, especially in that day and age and in such a small town. Thank goodness for that.
Yeah.
So you've been called by many sort of a Renaissance man. And for those of you that don't know, Jim is a fantastic artist.
Illustrations, pen and ink, watercolor, do oils, I do acrylics, I've done stone sculpture. Pretty much I've done a lot of work in the arts, the applied arts.
On many of Jim's videos, you may have seen line drawings, pen and ink drawings, and those are Jim's. So ones that you've seen of Jimmie's place and parts of old Buena Vista and some parts from tribal lands and some things like that. Go back and check them out. Those are all Jim's drawings. He's absolutely fantastic. But he's also quite a musician. So let's talk about college. You were at the University of Dayton, correct? Studying art?
No.
Music.
Music.
Studying music.
And the Dayton Art Institute studying art.
Both at the same time?
Both at the same time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And working full-time also as a musician.
Jim is a Navy veteran and of the Vietnam War era. So, Jim, tell us, how did you come to join the Navy?
I'd been going to the Dayton Art Institute and the University of Dayton, and my parents, God rest their souls, still had two sisters and a brother younger than me who were going to go to college, because that's what we did. We went to college, or at least we got a good education post high school. And so they were paying $500 in 1960 for me to go for part of my tuition and room and board. I didn't need their money. I was working 6 nights a week in a little nightclub close to the University of Dayton, and had a jazz band, a 5-piece, sometimes 4-piece, and we were playing, and the tips were good, and the wages were good. And quite frankly, I was making more than my dad was as a musician, and enjoying it. It was great. But I couldn't talk my parents out of spending that hard-earned money that I didn't need to go to college. So finally I decided that if I couldn't talk them out of it, I had to change the venue. So I decided I was going to go into the military. So I went down to the Dayton recruiting office, and I walked in the door, and I walked up to the sergeant sitting at the Marine desk and says, "I want to be a Marine." He looked me up and he looked me down. And he cocked his head back and says, "The Marine don't take fat boys."
Oh my God.
I was 220 pounds. That's not fat. I'm 6'3". I could run the 100 in about 10 flat. Come on, give me a break. And he just shooed me out. Well, as I was walking out the door, really, heartbroken basically, because I wanted to be a Marine. I heard this voice over to the side said, "Psst, hey kid, come here, son. Let's have a talk." It was a Navy recruiter, and he was a chief bosun mate, just like my dad was in World War II. And long story short, I filled out the papers. I went to Cincinnati recruiting station, held up my hand, made my pledge, and the next thing I knew, I was on a troop train going to Great Lakes Naval Training Center, where I did my basic training there.
I've heard you tell that when you went into the Navy, your intention was to become a Navy band member, like your sister and brother-in-law, correct?
Right. Correct.
But that's not what happened. So what happened that didn't happen?
Somehow during my time at Great Lakes, when I went to sick bay, I had some surgery done. When I got back out, my records for me passing the audition to go to band school evaporated.
Wow.
And so I was given my duty station orders when I graduated, standing up there in front of the chief, and he says, "Waters, you're going to report to Long Beach, California, Mine Ron 11. I believe it's going to be Mine Div 116. Here's your orders, son." I looked at him and says, But Chief, I'm supposed to be going to band school in Quantico, Virginia. What's with the Long Beach?" He put his hand on my shoulder and leaned into me and looked at me and says, "Son, you just go on over to Long Beach and you tell your CO, and he'll take care of everything for you." Next thing I know, I was chipping paint and painting and doing marlin spike seamanship and coiling lines, and I basically was a janitor in the United States Navy.
How did you end up in Vietnam then? How did you get from band school to chipping paint to just trying to survive in Vietnam?
It's a good question. I was blessed to have my dad as a chief bosun mate. He taught me marlin spike seamanship, and that is a skill that helps us as seamen to do all the line work and the splicing of wire and to actually just operate a ship. The transition happened when I had been out doing sea duty. We were out sweeping dummy mines out off the coast of California, and we had to locate where we had swept a mine up and put it on the chart. And my NCO, who was in charge of the small boat that I was on, MSB 54, was having a hard time actually getting to the coordinates on the map. So I said, "Here, I'm on the helm. Why don't you take the helm and I'll mark these for us?" And he was appreciative. And so I started marking charts. I must have caught the eye of some of my superiors, because it wasn't soon after that it all was kind of a blur, and I ended up in Vietnam on the Mekong River and its deltas, looking for places to put ports for swift boats. You know, the riverine boats that were so fast in the delta in Vietnam that did so much good work out there. Well, we were looking for places to put ready ports upstream so that they could be more active.
And so what happened after you got out of the Navy?
Well, as soon as I got out of the Navy, actually I wasn't living in California anymore, because we moved back to Ohio, because Pop said, "Come on back, I got a job for you." And so jumped in the car, moved back to Ohio. And time I got there, the union had gone on strike.
Oh.
So here I was, an entered apprentice, an apprentice in the ironwork trade, and I had no jobs to go to because there was no jobs going. It was a shutdown. And so I weathered through that, doing odd jobs and catching some income as I could. And fortunately, we went back to work, and I spent the next 4.5, 5 years in Dayton, Ohio area. I really loved working in the construction trade. I enjoyed the camaraderie. I enjoyed the sense of accomplishment. But finally, I decided I needed to be more. I need to be more of an artist. I was going to move back to San Clemente because, man, that was a really great town to live in at that time. And I got myself a good paying job in a company that made relays for electronic equipment. And I was the storeroom manager for them. And everything was going swell until one day I got fired.
That will end it.
Well, it does end that. Long story short on that one was I knew we had a shrinkage of precious metals, gold and silver and platinum relay pieces. What I didn't know is that my supervisor had the key to the storeroom, and the supervisor was the one that was stealing the material.
Uh-oh.
So by the time my wife and the kids get to California, I got no job. So subsequently, I went to work with Graphics 3, doing something I really liked, doing creative work. And we had some really great contracts with Baskin and Robbins and Texas Instrument and Busch Gardens and just a whole lot of other places we worked there. And then I had a friend of mine said, I'd like to go in partnership with you. And I said, "Okay, Jerry, what are we going to do?" He said, "Well, I got this little print shop, and I'd like you to help me manage it, and we'll be 50-50 partners on it." I said, "That's fine with me." So we started printing, and it was downtown Long Beach, and it was really cool. Really enjoyed it. Then one day, a shorter gentleman came into the shop and said something in a really thick Cockney accent about getting some printing work done. Finally, I says, "Hey, man, can't you just speak English?" He says, "I am speaking English, blah, 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 blah." And come to find out, this was a gentleman, a magnificent gentleman, Christopher Robin Pook, who was the founder and creator of the Long Beach Grand Prix, which was just phenomenal. And so I was printing up same day records from the races he was having, the preliminary races before it became Formula One and IndyCar. And so I established a good relationship. And I was a front man for the Long Beach Grand Prix, going around and meeting with organizations we wanted to sell blocks of tickets to. And it was very interesting. I'd walk into the business or an event like it would be the Chamber of Commerce in Beverly Hills and say, "Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jim Waters, and I am with the Long Beach Grand Prix, and we do it in the streets of Long Beach." I had their attention at that point, and we did sell tickets. Subsequently, I was able to work on track as an on-track photographer. I guess this is another one of my Renaissance man things. Mm-hmm. And from that, I met some people in the Hollywood media industry, and eventually became an on-camera and voiceover actor and producer for film and television through 1995. I think was my last time at doing that.
So you also had a career in Hollywood. Tell everyone what your most exciting project was.
Oh, wow. Most exciting project. That's a great question, Kel. I can't identify it as one. I suspect the most productive and most financially rewarding, obviously,
and the most well-known.
Most well-known. I was a unit producer, and I was also a voice in Disney's Pocahontas, where I did the voice of Namantak, and I provided all the Native American voices in the background that you heard, the drum and the singing and all the people talking in the background, as we call it in the industry, Walla Walla. That was remarkable. I also enjoyed immensely writing with Iron Eyes Cody in the Rose Parade and in the mounted events there. That was remarkable. And while I was working with Iron Eyes Cody in this last part of my film and television career, I met another gentleman. His name was Ken Kingsbury. And he got me a contract with Seven Locks Press, where I met Jim Reardon, and I had a manuscript of View from the Medicine Lodge, a collection of stories, Native American stories about life as Indians, as we called ourselves, in history and in regional areas, and Native American in the more sophisticated areas. We created the book. Jim published it for us at Seven Locks Press, and we premiered the book in just after 9/11.
Oh, wow. That had to be a tough time.
Yeah, it was really a tough time. And it was at the Jacob Javits Center, and we had our booth down out on the perimeter. And I got to meet Jack Canfield at one of the booths that he had for Chicken Soup of the Soul with Mark Victor Hansen, and got to talk with him and presented my book to him. And of course, he gave me his book on America, Chicken Soup of the American Soul. And after he read View from the Medicine Lodge, he commented, because I wanted it to be a chicken soup book. Actually, I really wanted it to be a chicken soup book. And he said, "This is too powerful for chicken soup. It's like chicken soup on steroids. This one needs to be marketed in a good way." Well, over the next few years, the book was very successful.
So that touches a bit on your Native American heritage and spirituality.
Yeah, that goes back a long way. It was early in my life when I was living in Buena Vista, which we fondly referred to as Buny. On Sundays, I would go to church service with my mom and her family, and sometimes my dad at the Methodist church there in town. But on Saturdays, I would spend time with my dad's family, my aunts and my uncles down in Sandy Springs, Ohio, about 3.5 miles down the road, and would be learning my Midewian tribal heritage. It's not Midewian like the Ojibwe or the Chippewa. It was a similar pathway. And anyway, it was learning the 4 levels of the earth and the 4 levels of the sky and the studies of what Creator, what God had given us, and to learn how to recognize what He'd given us so that when we pass through the veil at the end of our life, and Creator said, well, hey, Jim Great Oak, what did you do on all those years when you were down on the face of my little blue marble? And I would say, well, maybe we should order out for beer and pizza because this may take a while, sir. But it was a study of the earth and the sky, and it's been my passage ever since. I met some people in Central Ohio who had formed a band of Shawnee remnants, and we met with each other for a long time. I worked diligently to help the band grow, and eventually I was a clan chief and became the sub chief of the band or the tribe, which was a great honor. Subsequently, like most everything in Native American history, the divisiveness that the American government has put upon us by dividing us between federally recognized tribes and non-recognized tribes, which is like the federally recognized people are about 10% of all the people who have Native ancestry who know it in the United States today.
Wow.
So this division, it was critical, and it drove us apart. And so we separated into other bands, and eventually I found my home in Greenville, Ohio, with a group that was under the leadership of Tawaskoti. What another remarkable human being who was Shawnee, but she was Shawnee descended from the Canadian Shawnee.
So you moved back and forth between Ohio and California quite a bit.
Yeah.
So when did you move back to Ohio the last time?
It was shortly after 9/11, during that decade. So we decided to move once again, just my wife and I, to Southern Ohio, back in the hills where I was raised, literally just over a couple ridges over, where I learned all my passages as a Shawnee man, as a Mide man, and so it was old country for me, and it felt good to be back home. It was really cool living up the holler, halfway between Portsmouth and West Union, which was the county seat of the next county over, Adams County. And during that time, I established a remarkable bond with my older brother, who I love. He's my only hero. Everybody says they got a lot of heroes. I only got one hero. He's my brother. And God bless him. Good health to you, brother. And we went back. He was in masonry at the time. My dad was a 32nd degree Mason and a master Mason. My grandfather, George T. Waters, was master of the lodge at Rome, Ohio. And so I joined the Rome Lodge. And subsequently, I went through all the chairs in Blue Lodge and eventually became master of our lodge. And then I went into York Rite and became masters of the various lodges in York Rite. It eventually became a KYCH, York Rite Knight of Honor, and extraordinarily humbling responsibility, and knowing that my brothers and companions had found me worthy to lead them in the various different lodges to get to that point. I'll never forget this, and I'm looking forward to extending and continuing my Masonic journey here in Arizona.
So as I said, Renaissance man. We've been through art and music and military and acting and masonry.
Forgot to tell you about my activism.
Photography.
Yes.
Political activism.
Yeah.
And you ended up, seems like you have settled now into motivational speaking and authorship. So now we're getting very close to the time when Jimmie met Kelly, which you can hear more about in last week's video if you've not seen it already.
Right.
So it's been a long road for both of us from Ohio to Arizona.
Yes.
And here we are. I can't believe it's been 5 years already since we've been here.
I appreciate the fact that I'm now living with you and Brian here in Arizona, and it's a remarkable place to live. I never thought when I was taking survival training at Fort Huachuca that I ever want to live in the desert again, but I'm having a great time doing it. And yes, we're motivational speakers, and I guess I've been a motivational speaker most of my adult life in one way or another, and I'm glad to have a companion and a partner that we can walk this path together as one.
Well, I am truly honored. So just a few last quick questions.
You mean there's more?
What makes you laugh?
Watching our kitty cats play. I like watching YouTube channels and the pratfalls that go on with that. What makes me laugh, makes me smile is to go out and watch the sunrise, to watch these beautiful sunsets. What makes me laugh is to slide down the hill on my bum on a piece of plastic on the snow. What makes me happy and makes me laugh is to shovel snow. The deeper it is, the harder the work, the happier I am. And I got to do it a couple weeks ago. Thank you very much.
And what makes you cry?
What makes me cry most is two things. One, seeing my friends cry, people I love cry. And the other is missing my family, missing my mom and my dad. When we were getting ready to do the video on Pop Broke His Back, I lost it. I had a meltdown. I deal with PTSD from combat in Vietnam, but this was different. And I was there that day that my dad broke his back. Not the day he broke his back, the day he came home, and the things that had to happen. And I'd written this story for our book. Grandma was a kitchen healer and Grandpa grew roses. And I'd edited the script and I was ready to do it. And I got to the point where they were taking the cast, my brother's taking the cast off my dad's body, and seeing his body for the first time after being encased in that plaster for several weeks. And I just lost it. And I cried. I also cry about humanity's inhumanity to each other. What's going on in the Ukraine and what's going on in Central Africa, what's going on in the Middle East, what's going on in China. How can humans treat each other so abysmally and still call themselves humans? my heart weeps when I see this happening. So, yes, I laugh and I cry and I get up every morning saying, this is the best day of my life. And I intend on making it. So far, it's happening.
Well, thank you so much for spending this time with all of us and giving us more of an insight into who Jimmie is. And so everyone can get to know you a little bit better. One last thing. Tell us about your grandfather's vision.
Wow. My dad's dad, Big Dad Waters, had visions. He had dreams and he had visions, and he darn well knew the difference. And one day he came up to me and put his hand on my shoulder and said, hey, Jimmie, I had a vision of you that I was at your 100th birthday party. Well, I was, preteen, and I looked up at my grandfather and all of his 6'2" height, and that's why they called him Big Dad. And I said, well, Grandpa, how long did I live? And he says, well, how the hell would I know that? I didn't envision that. But I'm going to live to be 100. And that's 20 more years. And so with this parting thought from me, you're all invited to my 100th birthday party. It's going to be a great extravaganza. It'll be in all the newspapers. You don't have to worry about where it's going to be. Notice will be out there because you'll see this same face right here telling y'all, come to my birthday party. You're invited to my birthday party. See you then.
All right. Well, that wraps up one more episode of Everyone Has a Story, True Tales from Everyday Life. This has been Jimmie's story, and we're so glad that you were here with us today. If you find content like this interesting and are interested in learning more and sharing more with us, consider subscribing with the notification bell on. We're brand new in this space and we're growing, and we're so happy that you are here. And any support you could give, including a thumbs up, would be greatly appreciated. And we hope to see you next week on Everyone Has a Story, True Tales from Everyday Life.
And don't forget to punch the subscribe button.
You know what to do.
You know what to do. Oh, next week is Jimmie meets Kelly. We're going to have Kelly's story. See you then, folks. Thank you.